I died. That's not a metaphor or some poetic way of describing a hard time. I literally died. And what happened on the other side is something I never thought I'd be chosen to see. But I was. And now I know I have to tell someone, anyone, because if I stay quiet, I'll be burying the most powerful truth I've ever encountered. The truth Jesus himself showed me, and it had everything to do with black people and what the world has hidden about them. I didn't wake up that day thinking my soul was about to be yanked out of my body and taken somewhere between life and eternity. It started like any other forgettable morning. I hit snooze too many times, dragged myself out of bed, and went straight to the kitchen, still half asleep. The coffee was too bitter. I forgot to charge my phone overnight. My mind was racing with everything I had to do, emails to send, bills to worry about, things to fix, people to call. It was just another stressful day in a long line of stressful days, and I thought I was fine. But something was off. I couldn't explain it then, but now I know. The sky outside looked strange. Dull, not quite grey, but not normal either. The air felt heavy in my chest, like I was breathing in pressure. I remember looking at the clouds while I sat in traffic and thinking it looked like something was waiting to break through. I brushed it off. Just another weird morning. I didn't know that by the end of that drive I'd be dead. I was maybe 10 minutes from work when it hit. A searing, stabbing pain shot straight through my chest, and everything in me just froze. Not a panic attack. Not anxiety. This was something else. It was like being struck by invisible lightning. I tried to inhale, but nothing came. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, but it didn't matter. I couldn't hold on to anything. My vision started to fade around the edges. I couldn't hear the music playing anymore. It was like the world was retreating from me. Cars blurred into streaks of colour, and the sounds of the city slowed to a thick, syrupy hum. My foot must have slipped off the pedal because I felt the car jolt. And then, impact, screeching tyres, a crunch that felt like it came from inside my skull. And then silence. There was no tunnel of light yet, no bright gates, just the sensation that I was no longer part of what was happening around me. I was lying on the cold pavement, staring straight up at the sky I had seen just minutes before, and now it looked different. Bigger, endless, like it was pulling at me. I could hear people shouting, could feel the tremble of chaos around me, but none of it touched me. It was like my body was just a costume I'd stepped out of. The pain that had ripped through my chest was gone, and in its place was a strange quiet. Not peace exactly, something deeper. Like every fear I'd ever carried had been turned down, like the world was letting me go and I wasn't afraid. I remember thinking, is this death? Because it didn't feel scary. It didn't feel like the end. If anything, it felt like a doorway had opened and I was being invited to step through it. One moment, I was looking at the sky from the ground, and the next, I was looking at the ground from the sky. I saw myself, my body, lifeless, sprawled out, the paramedics pushing through the crowd, someone kneeling next to me crying. I felt no panic, no urge to scream or run. It was like watching a memory I hadn't lived yet. I was there, but I wasn't. My feet weren't on anything solid, but I wasn't falling either. I was floating. I tried to talk, to move, to shout that I was okay, or at least that I was still something, but nothing came out. My mouth didn't exist anymore. My voice had no body. And yet, I felt more like me than I ever had when I was alive. That was the terrifying part. I felt free, like the world below had always been a kind of dream, and I had finally woken up. Then I felt it. Something was pulling me, not dragging, not forcing, guiding. There was no sound, but I knew it was time to go. And even though I didn't know where I was being taken, I didn't resist. I didn't want to. I turned away from the scene below me, and that's when I saw it. A light in the distance, small, but impossibly bright. Not the kind of light that blinds you, but the kind that calls you. I felt it in every part of me, even the parts I didn't know I had. It wasn't just light, it was a presence, warmth, power, love, home. And as I moved toward it, the world I had known, my name, my life, the people I loved, began to fade into something quieter, something that didn't matter in the way it once had. The closer I got to the light, the more I felt like I was becoming something new and ancient at the same time, something eternal. And just when I thought I was about to cross all the way in, I heard the voice. It didn't come from the light, it came from within it, and it said, "It's not your time." That voice shook me, not with fear, but with knowing. I couldn't argue with it. I didn't even think to ask why. I just knew it spoke truth. But it wasn't finished with me, because before I could turn back, everything around me shifted, and I found myself in a space I can barely describe. Not earth, not heaven, somewhere in between, a holding place, a place of revelation. And what I was about to see there would turn everything I believed upside down. The moment I heard that voice, "It's not your time," something inside me shifted. Not just in the way that words can move you, but like a command that your very soul has no choice but to obey. It didn't sound like any voice I've ever heard on earth. It wasn't deep or booming, but it vibrated through me like thunder rippling through my bones. It was layered, familiar, holy. It didn't just speak to my ears, it spoke to my existence. And then, just as quickly as it came, the light that had pulled me forward paused. Everything stilled. There was no sound, no movement, no breath. It felt like time itself had stopped in respect of whoever that voice belonged to. Then the light dimmed, not like a candle flickering out, but as if it was parting, making room for something greater to appear. That's when I became aware that I was standing in a new space. I wasn't floating anymore. My feet, if you could call them that, were on something solid, but it didn't feel physical. It felt like I was standing on a foundation of peace, of pure presence. Around me stretched a place with no edges, no horizon, no ceiling. It wasn't Earth, but it wasn't alien. It felt like a place I had always known but had forgotten. Like something buried in my soul had finally been unlocked. There was weight to the air, but not the kind that pressed down on you. It lifted you. It was thick with meaning, with presence, with knowing. I didn't understand it at first, but somehow I knew this was holy ground. And then he appeared. I didn't see him walk in. One moment he wasn't there, and the next he simply was. I froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't even think in the way we think here. My mind wasn't operating from logic anymore. It was reacting from soul, from recognition. I didn't need an introduction. I didn't need him to say his name. I knew. Every part of me screamed in silent worship. Jesus. He didn't look like the pictures we're shown. He wasn't pale or blonde. He wasn't draped in robes that made him look like he belonged in a painting. He was beyond appearance. His light wasn't around him. It came from within him. It didn't blind me, it revealed me. I felt like I was standing in front of a mirror that didn't just show my reflection, but my essence, my failures, my secrets, my fears. My entire life unfolded in his gaze, like the pages of a book being read aloud in the language of eternity. But here's the thing, there was no shame. There was no judgment, only understanding, pure, deep, all-consuming understanding. And love. A love that didn't excuse my mistakes but saw beyond them. A love that saw me completely and still called me worthy to stand before him. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I didn't even try. My soul was the one doing the listening, the one receiving. And when he did speak, it was unlike anything I'd ever heard. His voice was like music and thunder and silence all at once. It didn't hit my ears. It hit me. Every cell, every memory, every corner of who I was trembled in reverence. "You are not here by accident." That's what he said. And even though I didn't understand what he meant yet, I trusted it, deeply, fully. And just as I began to form the question in my heart, "Why am I here?" he lifted his hand, and in a moment that defied time and space, everything around us shifted again. Gone was the stillness, gone was the space. I was no longer standing, I was witnessing. We had moved, or the world had moved around us. I couldn't tell. All I knew was that suddenly I was somewhere else entirely, not a place, but a reality. And in this place, visions began to form, not like dreams or imagination, but as living truths suspended in light. I didn't just see them, I felt them. They vibrated with meaning and echoed with something ancient. The first image was breathtaking. Africa, not the version the world shows us, not the one drenched in poverty and conflict, but a radiant land pulsing with energy. It glowed with a golden hue, not just beautiful, but sacred. I saw cities built with a kind of knowledge we no longer understand. I saw people, black people, tall, powerful, radiant, walking in wisdom and spiritual mastery. They weren't just living, they were connected to each other, to the earth, to the divine. Jesus stood beside me, watching me take it all in. And then he spoke again. "The world has lied about them." The words hit like a spiritual earthquake, not because they were shocking, but because deep down, something in me had always known it was true. I watched as more visions unfolded, ancient ceremonies, communities guided by spiritual leaders, women and men speaking directly to heaven, healing with touch, interpreting the will of God without books or translators. There was power, there was clarity, and it had been hidden. They were given gifts, Jesus said. Wisdom, authority, connection. But it was stolen. I saw it then, the shift, the darkening, chains, ships, screams carried across oceans. I saw people ripped from their land, their families, their identity, and I saw something even darker, spiritual forces behind it all, orchestrating not just physical slavery, but a silencing of divine inheritance. I saw how their history had been rewritten, their spiritual identity smeared, their strength hidden even from themselves. Jesus looked at me. His face was filled with sorrow, but also fire. They have forgotten because the world taught them to forget, but their souls remember, and the time has come for them to awaken. I was shaking. The gravity of it all, how much had been lost and how much still lived within, was too heavy for words. This wasn't just a cultural erasure, this was a spiritual assassination. But despite the centuries of suppression, the light had never gone out. I saw it in the vision. Black people across the world, starting to remember, starting to feel the stirring. A call from deep within their DNA, waking them up to something older than history. And then he said it. They were chosen. Not to be superior, not to dominate, but to carry something sacred, a frequency, a connection, a mirror of divine truth. And that's why they were targeted. Because the ones in power feared what they carried. Feared the disruption of a system built on lies. Feared the return of a truth that could not be controlled. I turned to Jesus, overwhelmed. I didn't know what to say, but I didn't need to speak. He knew, he always knew. They must remember, he said, because when they do, the world will change. And in that moment, I knew why I had been brought here. I had died, but not just to see. I had died to know, and to return with a message that was never meant to stay silent. The vision didn't stop with just a glimpse. Jesus raised his hand again, and everything around me moved like it was alive, flowing, shifting, revealing layer after layer. The radiant image of ancient Africa faded, and what replaced it was darker, heavier. I saw chains, rusted, cruel, and cold. Not just metal, but spiritual. They didn't just wrap around wrists and ankles, they coiled around identity, wrapped tightly around the mind and the soul. I saw ships, massive wooden monsters floating on black water filled with human cargo, packed in like objects, like their dignity had been erased. But even more horrifying than the physical pain was the silence. The silence of generations being told through word and whip that they were less, that they were cursed, that their connection to God was illegitimate, that their wisdom was savagery and their gifts were threats. I watched as families were torn apart, as languages were stripped away, as names were taken and replaced with numbers, labels, slurs. But what shook me the most wasn't just the suffering, it was what I saw moving behind it all. There were forces, dark, intelligent, ancient, whispering behind the scenes. Not men, not armies, but spiritual entities, orchestrating chaos with precision. They weren't interested in territory or gold. They were after something far more powerful, truth. The truth that lived inside those stolen people. The truth that their spirits carried no matter how much was taken from their bodies. Jesus turned toward me, and his face, his eyes, were fierce, filled with a fire that wasn't angry, but righteous. The oppression was not just physical, he said, it was spiritual. Because if they remembered who they are, if they knew what they carry, the entire world would shift. I saw how these dark forces didn't just want to enslave the body, they wanted to sever the divine connection. They wanted to stop the flow of spiritual knowledge that had once been so strong, so clear. It was never just about plantations, it was about purpose, prophecy, power. And even in the middle of all that horror, I saw something incredible. The spirit within them. It didn't break. They were beaten, yes. Silenced, yes. But broken? Never. Their prayers still rose. Their songs still echoed with sacred rhythm. Even chained, they dreamed. Even exiled, they remembered. Somehow, even in darkness, they carried the light. Then the vision shifted again, and I saw the present. Today's world. Cities, technology, distraction. But beneath it, I saw people waking up. I saw black men and women all over the world starting to feel it. A pull, a whisper, a restlessness. Something inside them that wouldn't be quiet anymore. Some of them didn't even know why they were searching, why they couldn't find peace in the explanations the world offered. But it was because the truth inside them was waking up. The lie couldn't hold forever. And Jesus, he smiled. Not the kind of smile you give when something's funny, but the smile of someone watching a prophecy unfold. The time of revelation has begun, he said. They will rise again. Tears welled up in my spirit, not just sadness for what was stolen, but awe for what endured. These weren't just survivors. They were carriers of a truth that could not die. And then Jesus raised his hand once more, and what I saw next shook me to the core. He took me back, farther than before the chains, before the slave ships, before colonization ever existed. I saw an era so ancient the earth itself looked different. The air was purer. The people, black people, were not oppressed, not afraid. They were majestic, glorious. They walked in harmony with the earth, with the spirit realm, with heaven itself. They didn't need priests. They didn't need temples. They were the temple. I saw prophets, spiritual warriors, divine scientists of a kind we don't even have words for today. They understood energy, healing, the movement of the stars. They spoke with angels. They received visions without fear. They knew who they were and they knew who God was. That knowledge, that authority, it radiated from them. Then Jesus looked at me again. His eyes held sorrow, but also fierce, unshakable love. This is why they were targeted, he said, because those who rule fear, those who carry divine wisdom. That sentence struck me like lightning. Everything made sense. The distortion of their history, the ridicule of their spirituality, the erasure of their ancient brilliance. It was never about inferiority. It was about fear. the fear of what would happen if they remembered, if they stood up, if they spoke with the voice heaven gave them. I saw how even today efforts were being made to keep them distracted, divided, disconnected. Systems built on false power depending on them staying asleep. But even so, the flame within was rising. Then I saw something I didn't expect. Despite all the trauma, despite all the deception, they were reclaiming their strength. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in power. The kind of power that can't be faked. The kind of power that doesn't come from man, but from God. I saw young people learning, old wounds being healed, women and men remembering how to pray with authority, how to stand in sacred truth, how to know without needing anyone's permission. I saw churches that weren't churches, communities that felt like ancient tribes reborn. I saw them gathering, prophesying, teaching, healing, not waiting for validation, just moving in alignment. And Jesus said their power was never lost. It was only hidden. I began to understand then. This message wasn't just for black people, it was for the world. Because once the world saw who they really were, everything would change. It wouldn't be about one race rising above another. It would be about restoration, balance, truth being placed back where it belongs. Jesus wasn't lifting one group to tear others down. He was setting things right. And in that vision, I felt the shift. I felt the rising. Not loud or dramatic. Quiet. Unstoppable. Like the sun rising behind the darkest mountain. And then Jesus looked at me one last time in that moment and said, "They carry something that cannot be destroyed. And now, they must remember." And in that instant, I knew the weight of what I had seen. This wasn't just history. It was a divine mandate. And the world was about to see what it tried so hard to forget. When I opened my eyes again, everything was too loud, too bright, too sharp. The hospital ceiling hovered above me like a false sky, the fluorescent lights humming with a coldness that felt foreign after everything I had just witnessed. Machines beeped rhythmically beside me, nurses called out numbers and instructions, and my body ached like it had been dragged back from the edge of something ancient and beautiful. I had returned, but not completely. I was here in flesh, yes, but part of me was still there, in that realm where Jesus showed me the truth, where I saw black people in their divine origin, their power, their pain, and their rising. I looked at the faces around me, my family crying, holding my hands, thanking God I was alive, but I could barely focus on any of it. I wasn't in the same world they were in anymore. My body survived, but my soul had changed forever. For days, I could hardly speak. I felt like a guest in my own life. I tried to listen to the conversations, to reconnect with the rhythm of reality, but I couldn't shake the weight of what I had been shown. It wasn't a dream. I wasn't hallucinating. The presence of Jesus still lingered in my spirit like a fire that wouldn't go out. I tried to push it aside, to tell myself I needed to heal first, to breathe, to recover. But the truth wouldn't let me rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Africa glowing with divine light. I saw chains. I saw awakening. I saw the prophecy Jesus whispered to me still echoing in my heart. And I knew I couldn't keep this to myself. The first time I tried to talk about it, I gathered my closest family and friends. We sat in my living room while I tried to find the words for something that went beyond language. I told them everything, piece by piece, about dying, about meeting Jesus, about the visions, about what he revealed concerning black people and their hidden history. I spoke slowly, hoping each word would land, would strike something true inside them. I poured out my heart, trembling, tears running down my face, not from sadness, but from the pressure of holding something so massive. And when I finished, I looked around the room, praying that someone would say they felt it too. Instead, there was silence. Awkward, heavy silence. My sister shifted in her seat and gave me a soft smile. "You were in an accident, Jess. Maybe it was your brain processing trauma," she said gently, like she didn't want to hurt me. My best friend nodded slowly. "Yeah, maybe it's symbolic. Like something your spirit needed to see." My heart sank. I could feel it happening, the slow unraveling of their belief in me. They loved me, but they didn't believe me. Not really. And the more I tried to explain, the more I could see the doubt forming like a fog in their eyes. I thought maybe they just needed time. Maybe I was asking too much all at once. So I tried again with others, church members, acquaintances, even strangers online. I posted fragments of my experience, hinted at what I had seen, thinking maybe someone, somewhere, had felt the same shift. But the responses were mixed. Some were curious, a few were openly hostile. Others warned me to stop, saying I was playing with fire or pushing some agenda. One person even messaged me, "You're just trying to stir racial division. This isn't from God." I closed my laptop that night with my hands shaking. How could people not see it? This wasn't about race. It was about truth. It was about restoration. But the resistance wasn't just emotional. It became strange, unexplainable. My phone would randomly freeze when I tried to type out my testimony. My internet connection would cut off right as I was uploading a video. More than once, a full recording I had just finished disappeared entirely from my device. No trace, not even in the cloud. At first, I thought maybe it was just technology acting up. But then came the calls, late at night. No caller ID. I'd answer, and there would be silence, only breathing on the other end. I blocked numbers. I deleted apps. Still, they came. And then something happened that made my blood run cold. I had just finished a long, emotional voice recording about what Jesus had shown me. I spoke in tears. I was honest, raw, vulnerable. I felt like it was finally the one that would reach people. I went to upload it, but as soon as I hit send, the screen flickered, glitched. Then everything went black. The file vanished. Gone. No trace. I checked every folder, every backup, every recovery tool. Nothing. It was like it had never existed. That's when I looked up and saw it. A shadow on the wall, tall, still, too dark to be natural. I spun around. No one was there. My apartment was locked. My heart pounded in my chest, my throat tightening like something was choking the words before I could speak them. And then the voice returned. That same voice. Not loud, but undeniable. Keep speaking. This time it wasn't gentle. It was firm, urgent, a command. That's when I realized I wasn't just being discouraged, I was being silenced. Something, some force, did not want this message to be heard. I wasn't just sharing a story. I was pulling back a curtain that spiritual darkness had spent centuries trying to keep closed. This wasn't paranoia. This was a battle. And I had a choice to make. I could let the fear win. I could sit in silence, tell myself that maybe it wasn't real, maybe I was just overwhelmed. I could let the doubt of others drown out what I knew to be true. I could go back to pretending, living quietly, moving on. Or I could rise. I could defy the resistance and speak louder, write more, testify without apology. And even if no one listened, even if every door shut, even if I lost people in the process, I would still be obedient. Because Jesus didn't choose me so I could stay quiet. He chose me to be a witness, and witnesses don't hide. So I began again. I spoke in whispers at first, then louder. I made posts. I wrote. I started telling the story not to convince, but to declare. Not for approval, but for obedience. And that's when something shifted. One day, one of my posts went viral. I didn't expect it. It was a message from my heart, about the visions, about the rising, about what Jesus said. Thousands of comments flooded in. Not all of them were kind. Many still called me crazy, delusional, dangerous. But others said things that made me weep. I've always felt there was something missing about our history. Your words brought something alive in me. I've had similar dreams. I thought I was alone. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. I never had been. The message wasn't mine to protect. It was mine to release. The Spirit was moving across the earth, waking people up. Not just me, not just one voice, but many. We were like pieces of a puzzle being brought together. Each testimony, each awakening, each stirring of truth, part of a bigger picture that could no longer be denied. We were all holding fragments of a story that had been buried but never lost. And for every voice rising, there was pushback. I began to receive threats, not just from trolls or skeptics, but people who seemed to know too much. Messages saying, "Stop while you still can." Emails I never signed up for with warnings that chilled me. I would post something, and it would vanish within minutes. Accounts got flagged, shadow banned, erased. But for every attack, my resolve grew stronger. Because now I knew I was on the front lines of something ancient. This wasn't just resistance, this was war. A war for truth, a war for identity, a war for souls, and I had already made my choice. I would not back down. Because once you've seen what I've seen, once you've stood in the light of the one who is truth itself, there is no going back. There is only forward, only obedience, only the mission. And no matter how loud the darkness roars, I will keep speaking. Because this isn't about me anymore. It's about all of us. I thought I had seen it all. Thought I had been given the full vision. Meeting Jesus. Witnessing the truth about Black people. Feeling the resistance and facing the darkness trying to shut me down. I thought I had been prepared. But I was wrong. Because one night, as I sat in complete silence, praying, not even asking for anything, just sitting in his presence, I felt it again. That same shift, that same pull. My body didn't move, my eyes didn't close, but my spirit left. I was taken. Not violently, not suddenly. It was like being gently carried, like a wave of eternity washing over me and pulling me into a space that didn't exist on any map. Time didn't move there. It stood still, or maybe it never existed at all. And there, in that sacred stillness, I saw what hadn't yet come. Not the past, not even the present, but the future. At first, it was beautiful. I saw the awakening begin to spread, faster, deeper, unstoppable. I saw people, especially Black people, standing in their true identity. No longer trying to fit into systems that had never been built for them, no longer trying to seek validation from those who once erased them. I saw them building new things, spirit-led communities, centers of learning, hubs of healing. I saw children being taught truth from the moment they could speak, truth about who they were, where they came from, and what lived inside their blood and bones. They prayed differently. They walked differently. I saw them speaking in tongues not taught by churches but inherited from their ancestors, languages not written down but carved into their souls. I saw music, dance, art, science, all powered by the Spirit of God moving through a people who had remembered. It was radiant. But then the vision turned. The beauty gave way to chaos. I saw the world resisting, not just individuals, not just skeptics, systems, governments, media, even religious institutions. I saw massive attempts to discredit the truth, documentaries created to twist it, scholars paid to deny it, pastors warned not to speak of it. I saw entire platforms silencing voices, erasing pages, labeling this revelation as dangerous. And then I saw it, the shadows, the same spiritual forces Jesus had shown me before, but now they were frantic, angry, desperate. They weren't just whispering anymore. They were screaming, manipulating, possessing. They knew their time was short. The awakening threatened their entire empire of lies, and they were prepared to burn the world down to stop it. Then the earth itself responded. I saw floods swallowing cities, not just in places known for water, but in deserts. I saw fire raining where skies were once clear, earthquakes splitting the land in places that had never shaken before. I saw global panic, not the kind that trends for a week, but fear that pierced the hearts of people, fear that made the world tremble under the weight of something it could no longer deny. People ran, people cried, people pleaded for safety, and I turned to Jesus. He was there beside me again, calm, steady, eyes full of both sorrow and strength. I asked him, "Why is this happening?" And he answered, "Because the world must be shaken before it can be restored." Then he showed me what came after. It was unlike anything I had seen before. A new world, still earth but renewed. People no longer living for vanity, greed, or division. Instead, they moved in harmony. And leading that shift, those who had been forgotten, rejected, erased. Black people restored to their original purpose, not lording over others, but guiding with wisdom, teaching, healing, prophesying. A people once called cursed, now known as carriers of divine balance. Their voice wasn't loud, it was authoritative. Their presence didn't demand, it revealed. I saw nations come to them not to take, but to learn. I saw the elderly honored, the children protected, the Spirit of God resting visibly on entire communities. And Jesus said, "The final battle has begun, but victory belongs to those who walk in truth." And then, like before, I was pulled back. My breath caught in my throat. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, shaking, not from fear, but from the magnitude of what I had seen. My body could barely contain the weight of it. My heart pounded as if it had been running through realms, and my hands trembled from the fire still burning in my spirit. I knew I didn't have time to wait anymore. What I had seen wasn't far off. It was coming. Some of it was already here, and most of the world was still asleep. I wanted to scream it from the rooftops. I wanted to pull people from their slumber. But I also knew some wouldn't want to wake up. Some would hold on to the comfort of their lies, even as the world collapsed around them. Some would choose to believe what was easier, what required nothing of them. And Jesus had warned me. Not everyone will survive what's coming. Not because they're unloved, not because they're unworthy, but because they refuse to see. Some will cling to fear. Some will deny the truth even when it's staring them in the face. But those who embrace it, those who walk into the unknown with faith, they will become unshakable. Since then, I've spoken louder, not just with my mouth, but with my life. I carry this message everywhere I go. I speak to strangers, I post online, I write, I pray with a fire I didn't know I had. I've lost people, I've been laughed at, I've been mocked, I've been threatened, but I don't care. I saw what I saw, and I will never be the same. There's a war happening, not with bullets and bombs, but with truth and deception. And every person is already in it, whether they know it or not. If you've felt it, felt like something in the world doesn't make sense anymore, like your soul is restless, like you're being called to something but can't quite name it, it's because you are. That tug, that discomfort, that hunger for more, it's not random. It's your spirit responding to the awakening. You are not crazy. You are being called. The veil is lifting. The lies are crumbling. The systems are shaking. And the truth is coming to the surface, whether the world is ready or not. Jesus didn't show me all this so I could keep it to myself. He didn't let me die and come back just to sit in silence. He showed me because I was supposed to tell you, to tell everyone, to shout it if I have to warn, to prepare, to encourage. This is not a story about one group rising over another. This is a story about restoration, about people returning to what they were always meant to be, about purpose being revived, about the final chapters of a battle that began long before we were born and is now reaching its climax. I don't know how many more chances I'll get to share this. I've felt the pressure tightening. I know there are forces that would love nothing more than to silence me forever. But before that happens, I need you to understand this. This is not just my story. This is yours. You were meant to hear this. You were meant to remember. You were born into this generation for a reason. And now the choice is in your hands. Will you stay in the illusion? Or will you wake up? Will you follow the world? Or will you rise in truth? You don't need to be perfect. You don't need a title or a pulpit. You only need willingness, faith, courage. And once you take that step, everything will change. Because once the truth is revealed to you, you can never unsee it. And when you step into that truth, you carry the power of heaven with you. The world may try to stop it. Darkness may try to block it. But nothing can silence a soul on fire with divine truth. The time is now. The veil is torn. The world is groaning, and the warriors are awakening. Choose wisely.